Hey team, we are live and we're talking today about yo-yo diets and the self-defense system in your body. So what this means is how your body responds to weight loss and fat loss. We're not talking about like karate self-defense. Hiya! I used to do karate, so I can legitimately hiya whenever I want to. Anyway, so this is part 2 of a weight loss and dieting series. So if you haven't already watched part 1, I would encourage you to go back and watch that and do the action points from part 1 before jumping on here and doing part 2. So just to quickly cover what part 1 was about, we basically covered like an introduction to weight loss and fat loss and how diets impact those things in a kind of more in-depth way and longer term. So not just the initial weight loss that you might achieve on a diet, but how that weight loss might impact your ability to lose weight or maintain weight in the future. And the action points from week 1 or part 1 were to keep a food diary. So to begin logging your food and making sure that it's detailed enough that I would be able to kind of pull out and give you some really, really strong feedback. And then basically just kind of letting go of the idea that there's a perfect pre-formed diet that's out there for you. That's really not true. You know, diets are quite cookie cutter. They're quite kind of generic. They're aimed at the masses. So what I want you to kind of adopt as an idea is that you need to be introspective. You need to create a way of living, a way of eating, a way of doing exercise and lifestyle change that kind of works for you. So you're creating something bespoke that takes into consideration all the limitations on your lifestyle. So whether that be working, caring for someone, you know, anything that impacts your choices and how you live your life, that's got to factor into your planning and implementing on a diet. So and then the third action point on week 1 was to kind of have a conversation with your family and make sure that they're kind of on board with the changes that you're trying to make. You're not trying to enforce your changes onto them, but you're just trying to make sure that they're on board with you, making a few small tweaks and getting yourself and them to the point where they're feeling more energetic and more confident about the choices that you're all making together. Because, you know, rarely are we doing this on our own. We've usually got someone else to factor into this equation, and it really does help if we have our loved ones, especially the ones that we're living with, on board with the kind of approach that we're trying to take. Again, you're not trying to force them to follow something that they don't want to follow. You're just asking for their support and letting them know that things might be changing slightly for you. And as you know, but in terms of the changes for them, it's entirely up to them how much or how little they want to get involved, but you'd appreciate it if they would. So that was kind of what part 1 was about. So we're moving on to part 2 today, which is the kind of going into more depth on yo-yo dieting and how your body responds to that. So when we try to lose weight, your body doesn't really recognize the difference between like a fat loss diet and a kind of a starvation. So to your body, they're the same thing. You're cutting out calories, you're in a calorie deficit, and your body kind of has to find a way to fight back. And it has no way of telling the difference between those two things. So whether you are cutting calories or, you know, creating a bigger energy gap to lose weight for your health, or whether you're doing it for starvation, which I hope you're not doing that, your body doesn't know the difference. Okay, even if you are mentally telling yourself that's what you're doing, your body doesn't have a clue. Okay, your body functions for one purpose only, and that is for keeping you alive. Okay, that is the body's one and only job, is to keep you alive. So if your body thinks that you're kind of going into this famine state where it feels threatened and in danger, then it is going to fight back. And I'm going to talk you through the different things that happen in your body when you go into that kind of dramatic calorie deficit. And sometimes the deficit doesn't even have to be that dramatic to have these effects. So just bear this in mind. And before I start baffling everyone with biology, I want to make sure this is pitched at the right level today. So I'm going to be kind of talking through different elements of biological things that are happening. But if you feel stuck, if you feel confused, please post in the comments. Please ask me to qualify anything that you're not sure about or clarify it, and I'll talk you through it in more detail. Okay, so when we want to lose weight and want to lose body fat, we do have to create a calorie deficit. We need to either potentially exercise a bit more to expend more calories, or we need to cut a little bit off our intake. Either way, that creates a deficit and should put us into a fat loss state. But as you know, and as you've probably known for a while now, it isn't that simple. And especially if you've been through this diet cycle where you've been feasting, famining, not sure if famining is a real word, but you know what I mean. Your body kind of gets into this state where it's a bit resistant to change. And it's not really happy about what you're asking it to do. And you might find that you get kind of stuck a bit and there's like a brick wall in the way of you making progress. You might feel that you're working really hard in the gym or in your running program or whatever it is that you do. And you might feel that you're being really strict with your nutrition and your body still isn't responding. And if you've already kind of factored in elements of managing sleep, stress, and hormonal kind of support via nutrition, then we need to kind of start to understand the different processes in the body and how they are making an impact on the weight loss that you're trying to achieve. So the deficit that we create needs to be sufficient enough to stimulate a response, but we don't want it to be too much that we get these kind of negative impacts where the body and the metabolism starts to slow down. So your body is going to fight back. And when you drop your calories by too much, there's a few things that go on in the body. So your body will work to reduce your total daily energy expenditure. And I'm going to go through each of these in more detail in a minute. It will also work to reduce your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. It will reduce your basal metabolic rate. It will reduce the thermic effect of food. It will increase your appetite, and it will increase the kind of melee in your body that encourages fat storage. Okay, so I'm going to go into more details on what all of these things really mean, and I'll take them one by one. And again, if you've got questions, post them in the comments and I'll explain them hopefully in a way that you understand better. Okay, so total daily energy expenditure accounts for about 15% of your overall energy output. And that basically, this is an estimation of the calories burned per day when exercise is taken into account. So without kind of fancy scientific machinery, it's really difficult to have an exact value on this one, but we can do our best with estimates and we can estimate about 15% of the total. So during like a famine phase with a harsh caloric cut in your diet, your body will reduce your total daily energy expenditure by reducing your energy in general. So you'll be feeling a little bit more like, and it will reduce your drive to move your body. So what you've got to bear in mind is that you're burning calories. So you can see I do a lot of this when I talk. I'm burning calories when I'm doing this. This is not a conscious thing for me. I just use my hands a lot and I fidget a lot when I talk and present. Okay, so probably a nervous thing. So this is all part of your total daily energy expenditure, that 15%, and your body will act to reduce that when you're in a dramatic calorie deficit. So if you ever watch anyone that's presented when they've been on like a very, very severe diet, they will be more sluggish. They will move a lot less. You'll find that they're just a bit more kind of low key because they haven't got as much available energy to use in their expression, in their movement, in their vigor. Okay, so your body is basically trying to save as many calories as it can because it's protecting that kind of careless expenditure from those kind of wafty movements that we might do, or the fidgeting of your leg that you might do. Okay, so kind of non-exercise activity thermogenesis is also included in this. So that's about 10% of your overall energy output as well. And that's any movements that aren't really kind of exercise or sleeping or eating. So that's like your general pottering around, like hanging the washing out, washing the dishes, anything like that that's not classed as exercise, but it's still classed as activity. So NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, about 10%. And again, your body again will naturally try and reduce your energy output in those actions when you're in that famine phase to help conserve energy and conserve calories. So you will move less, you'll fidget less, you'll burn less calories day to day. And we don't really want this to happen. We want to take advantage of the fact that our body is working effectively and kind of encouraging that kind of expenditure of calories, because that's what helps us to, keep in that kind of energy balance that we need. Okay. So you might be thinking that 10% doesn't really count for much, but when you kind of account for 15% of TDEE and then 10% of NEAT, then it starts to add up. Okay, so these are just portions of your daily energy expenditure. Excuse me. So your basal metabolic rate, or your BMR, this basically accounts for about 60% of your total energy expenditure. And this is an estimation of the calories burned at rest before exercise is taken into account. So think like the organs inside your body and all the basic systems that are occurring that keep you alive. All of those things require energy to keep you alive and to keep moving and to keep working. So if your basal metabolic rate drops, then you will have a harder time maintaining your body fat levels, whether you are in a dieting phase or not. Your basal metabolic rate, basically, you want that to be as high as possible. You want to be burning as many calories as possible at rest, because that means we're in a good, healthy system, okay? And as part of the bigger picture and also on its own, we have to support this. We've got to be supporting it and trying to nudge it up. And we need a basic level of calories to support the system. And for most people, and I'm not counting people that are extremely thin or slim, and I'm not counting people that have potential metabolic damage. Most people's basal metabolic rate comes in at about 1,200 calories. But again, please don't quote me on that. That's not this is the only thing that matters. That's a baseline that we can kind of work from as an estimation. I want to make sure that we're supporting that, but also factoring in then on top of that exercise and everything else. So that 1,200 is not a recommendation. That is just a basic calculation that comes out of a BMR calculator that has been kind of applied across the general populace. But as you know, we're not kind of applying this to the general populace. We're trying to make this specific to you and your weight loss goals. And if you know that 1,200 calories is an amount that kind of makes you gain weight, then that's a different consideration. We've got to make sure that we're supporting wherever your BMR is, and factoring that in as an individual thing, rather than kind of trying to imprint what the science says onto you. We've got to take you as an individual and make sure that the numbers are making sense for you and what's coming out as your results. Okay. And then the thermic effect of food accounts for about 10 to 15%. So this is the increase in your metabolic rate after the ingestion of a meal. So this means that we burn calories to digest and process our food, which makes sense because we're asking one of our systems to do more work. So different types of foods can have a different kind of thermic effect. It's fairly well known that protein has the highest thermic effect. That doesn't mean that we should just eat protein. We need obviously the balance across all the macronutrients. But what this essentially means is that we need to use energy to get the energy out of our food, which it makes sense because we know from a science point of view that energy can't be created or destroyed on its own. So we need to put energy in to break the food down, to be able to get the energy out of that food and into our system. So it's basically a transference of energy. So you're putting something in to get something back. And this, again, accounts for about 10 to 15% of the total energy that you spend in a day. And it will have a significant impact on the whole picture of your energy output. And again, in that kind of famine state, that kind of calorie deficit, a kind of dramatic calorie deficit state, your thermic effect of food will reduce. So you'll be burning less energy in that process, which is not a good thing, because we want to be operating at our kind of maximal capacity with those sorts of things. Okay, so the things that are going to increase during this period are your appetite. So Your hormone leptin is basically one that signals to the brain to stop eating. So in this case, this won't be happening. So leptin won't be told to stop. It's going to keep going, and it's going to ask your brain to ask you to keep eating or keep stimulating your appetite, because the body is worried that we're not taking enough calories in. Okay. Ghrelin is another hormone, and this increases your appetite by signaling to the brain that you are hungry. And in this case, the ghrelin hormone is going to increase, or rather, it won't be stopped. So normally we have a balance between these two hormones. Leptin, when you are full, or when your body realizes that you are full, will decrease your appetite by saying, brain, come on, we've had enough now, let's stop. And ghrelin will increase your appetite when you're hungry. So that's where your appetite kind of comes from. So ghrelin signals to the brain to go, come on, guys, we are it's time for food now. Let's raise that appetite. Let's get those signals going to the body. That kind of rumbly tummy, that feeling you get when you know that you're hungry. That's ghrelin saying, come on, feed me. So these hormones can become weakened over time, and we can kind of learn to override or ignore their symptoms. So if we are consistently choosing to override the leptin signals and the ghrelin signals, then you're going to find an imbalance in those, and it's quite hard to re-find that balance. Okay, so we do need to be working on appetite signals, and setting out the meals at regular intervals and having sufficient kind of nutrition at each meal, so that we can actually support the hormonal signaling and get back to like a more level playing field. Okay. All of this, by the way, is going to be sent to you as a PDF, which will be linked up as a PDF on the resources area. So please do go and look at this. There's diagrams, there's more notes. So it's going to be worth having a look at that to make sure that you kind of reinforce what I've talked about, and kind of really kind of develop your understanding of how your body is going to work. Okay. And then the final part of today's kind of talk about what happens inside your body in the energy gap is fat storage efficiency. So when we are in a balanced phase, when we're kind of having a good level of calories in and a good level of calories burning out, your body will kind of expel some of the excess energy as heat. And that's what we are kind of talking about earlier, the non-exercise activity thermogenesis, the total daily energy expenditure. We're kind of carelessly expending calories and energy as heat. So that's a good thing. We want that to happen. If you are in a harsh calorie deficit, you will become more efficient at storing energy inside your body instead of releasing that excess as heat. And this is good for survival, but it's not good for fat loss. We evolved to capture energy inside the body, especially in a famine phase. If you kind of cast yourself back to the times when we were cavemen and women, when food would have been more scarce, when our evolution would have meant that we had to develop ways of storing energy. For example, we might have found a beehive where we could access a big kind of gallon of honey or something like that. We kind of evolved to eat that food and store as much of it as possible, because we wouldn't have known when the next time we were going to access that amount of food would be. It could have been days, it could have been a week in some cases, so depending on the kind of effectiveness of you as a hunter-gatherer. So we evolved to capture more energy from our food when we are in a famine phase, which, yes, we know now that food is plentiful, like logically we know that, but your body is still potentially kind of stuck in that evolutionary time where it's still going, no, my God, we're going to die. We need to keep all the energy inside. So it evolved to capture and store as much energy as possible. And in that famine phase, your body will work harder to cling onto every single calorie that comes through your system to store it inside your body, instead of expending it kind of carelessly, which it would do if we were in more of a kind of a balance that the body recognized. Okay, so if you keep putting yourself in this kind of self-defense mode, okay, your body is in that protective state where the mechanisms are working to store your energy rather than to expend your energy, then it will make subsequent weight loss more difficult. And that is not what we need. If you want to lose weight, we need to be in a state where we are, yes, in a calorie deficit, but not in a deficit that kind of inspires this fear and danger inside the body. So every time you activate this kind of self-defense system, which potentially has happened every time you've been through this yo-yo dieting phase where it's gone really low and then you've gone back up into a feast phase, really low into the famine, really high into the feast phase, whether that's through binge eating or whether that's just from having quite a restrictive diet and then back to normal, restrictive diet and then back to normal. Every time you do this and activate your self-defense system, and obviously it also depends on how intensely you do it, the more powerful this kind of self-defense response might be coming. Okay, so it does mean that it will become harder and harder and harder to lose weight and harder to keep the weight off if you're in a calorie surplus. Okay, so I don't want to scare you, okay? I don't want you to be in a state today where you start to panic about all the things that you've done before and all the things that I'm saying. I wanted today to be about understanding the body better, to getting you into a situation where you know the different elements that we're kind of working with the body and how different things work to kind of stimulate weight loss and fat loss. Realistically, we can't change the past, okay? We cannot change the fact that you might have done diets, you might have done binge eating or emotional eating. We can't change any of that. But what you can do is take action today and work on the lifestyle, work on the choices that you're making, and kind of take positive actions toward creating a better balance. Okay, so the actions from today that I'd really like to do is consider making your food diary a bit more detailed. If you've been writing it on paper, I would encourage you to consider using an app called MyFitnessPal and really working hard to be as accurate as you can in logging that food. We only really need 7 days of accurate logging to get a really good sense of the calories that you're taking in over 7 days. What I would normally do with that is average out those 7 days and take the calories as an average number divided by 7. Okay, so that gives us the kind of sense of what you're doing day to day. Yes, there's going to be fluctuations on different days. You might eat more on a training day, you might eat less on a rest day, or if you're me, it's the opposite way around. We're all individual, we all do different things. But what I really like to do is try and log the food diary more accurately, which gives us numbers to work with when we analyze it. Okay, and the second thing I want you to do is to go online, go onto Google, type in BMR calculator. It will come up with various different ones. Just pick any of them. You usually have to put in your age, your weight, your height, and your gender, and it should give you an estimation of your basal metabolic rate. Okay, some of them factor exercise in, other ones don't, so just see what comes out. You might want to do a couple of different ones and see if the numbers differ from each one to each one. I think it's always useful to have a couple of different numbers to work with, which again shows us that we are working with estimations here and we're not working with exact numbers, but we can only do the best with the tools that we have. So they're the actions from today, really. Calculate your BMR, record it and send it to me, and start really considering that work on a really accurate, detailed food diary. Okay, keep building on the knowledge that you have. Go back to this video, go back to the PDF that I'm going to upload onto the resources website a little bit later, and just make sure that you're getting kind of really thorough understanding of what your body is doing and how it's all working. Okay, if you have any questions, please either post in the comments of the video or send me an email. You know by now that I'm here for you. I'm going to talk you through it. I'm going to help you to understand how your body is responding and what we're going to do and how we're going to take action. Okay, I'm not going to leave you floundering. If you're stuck, if you're confused, if today was kind of too intense, please let me know. I want to pitch this at the right level so that it works for you in terms of you understanding the content and then being able to apply it to your lifestyle to make some positive change. Okay, thank you so much for your time. I'll catch you on the next one. So this is part 2 of a 6-part series, so just make sure you keep tuning in as and when I do them, and obviously I'll give you a heads up when they're going to be filmed live. Okay, thank you so much. I'll catch you on the next one, and I'll see you soon.